Hey, during this podcast, Micah, we like to say you don't have to think. If you think, you're dead.
Never gets old.
I love it. Love it.
We're going to do a clap, Micah. We'll just say 3, 2, 1, and then I'll clap, and we all clap together. Okay? 3, 2, 1. Ooh.
All right. That's our action.
Action. Yeah, action. Okay, here we go. Ready?
Let's do this.
Okay, folks, let's get something straight. We didn't slide into Cougar spot. It was ours, okay? That was by Goose. Rest in peace, Goose. You got it, folks. We're kicking off Flight 35. It's called The Real Top Gun Part 2 and Value Investing, which is, of course, just as exciting, probably. Anyways, now that we have that out of the way, a tip of the cap to you. Welcome to the Pilot Money Guys podcast, where we aim to bring you some aviation stuff, as well as some lighthearted financial fun. We've got an augmented crew today. The usual, as the millennials say, right, Ben?
Yeah, that's right.
Financial advisor, Ben the Cowbell Dickinson. Welcome, Cowbell.
Thanks, Rob. Good to be here.
Nice.
We've got certified financial planner and all-around good guy, Charlie the Godfather Mattingly. Welcome, Godfather.
Here, don't laugh at my call sign, Micah. Don't laugh at it.
And of course, we've got our big guest, former Top Gun Navy fighter pilot turned Air Force fighter pilot, as well as a UPS pilot. I mean, this guy's he's got it all. Micah Porter. Micah, what's your call sign so we can get it for the folks?
It was Peaches with a Z, so nothing like
Peaches.
anything that you would think about.
I like it. Now, did it change when you went from Navy to Air Force?
It did not. You know, the Air Force, I guess, has a tradition in the Viper community that once you go to combat with your call sign, it sticks. So from there, it stuck, and I will forever be known as Peaches with a Z.
I like it. I like it.
I hope you got that tattooed somewhere.
Try to convince my wife, but
She's not going for it.
He tried to show us that one time, Ben, in his hospital gown. Remember that? His backside.
Yeah, I can confirm. There's no tattoos back there.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's how you know you're a good financial advisor, when your clients start showing you all kinds of stuff. Very comfortable, very trusting environment here. So we've got Micah on board. Obviously, we're here to talk about Top Gun. Micah, let's kick it off. What's your best story? The most exciting story, Top Gun story, or Navy story, or if it's an Air Force story, hit us with it.
Well, hitting you with it. So
that's right. Going big.
Just a little clarification to the intro for anyone that is listening that knows Top Gun. So I graduated Top Gun in class 0 to 11, which is the January class of 2011. After that, I was assigned to.
So you're the one.
I'm the one.
That's my first of many Top Gun quotes. So I'll just stand by.
Yeah, it's allowed today and today only.
Yeah. After that, I was actually assigned to the West Coast Weapons School. So there's 4 or 5 different places that you can go. You can stay on at Top Gun staff, or you can go to either the West Coast or East Coast Weapons School. You can additionally go on to VX9, which is kind of the test community. And so that's where I went, was the West Coast Weapons School, which was a good time. But as far as stories go, oh man, I don't even know where to start. Probably the best story that I have going through Top Gun actual, and I'm glad I didn't tell the story back then, but I was down in San Diego, California, and I was fighting an instructor actually in the F-16. So as we go through dissimilar air combat maneuvering, we typically fight the F-16 because it's the smallest and it's the airplane that is most diametrically opposed to the F-18.
Oh, I thought you were going to say weakest. Okay.
But no, all the strengths of the F-18 are kind of the F-16's weaknesses, and all the strengths of the F-16 are the F-18's weaknesses. So they fight very differently. So I was fighting a newer instructor that just got qualified, and I actually wound up getting the better of him in the first set. I think that
nice.
A little fire under him. But the
As you can
second that
imagine.
didn't go so well. So I started transitioning. We do a tactic called a ditch when we become defensive and we're going down to the deck. The deck being, Top Gun hard deck.
The hard deck.
Nice.
Don't proceed below the hard deck. So
Did you break it? Did you break the hard deck?
I did not, but the other instructor did. So,
Oh,
Sweet.
but anyways, he was actually rolling in on me, and so I transitioned down to the deck. And what we do is, for lack of a better terminology, we try to create a range, angles, and closure problem so the other airplane will overshoot. Kind of like
Put on the brakes. They'll fly right by.
Right? So I did that, and all of a sudden I just hear this blood curdling scream. It was like, knock it off, unload your airplane. So unloading means you push the stick forward. And I just remember looking over, and his AIM-9X, which is a heat-seeking missile, was about 10 feet away from my head.
Whoa.
Bubble, we call it a bubble, a safety bubble, is typically a 500-foot pass. And so, 10 feet's a little bit closer than that.
Yeah.
Oh,
That was 4 days before I had my first child. So
gosh.
it was a hoot. That was probably one of my better Top Gun stories going through that school. So
Nice.
That's crazy. The Peaches was almost no more. No more Peaches
Yeah.
after that one. Oh.
Yeah. Backing up a little bit. I'll do an intro real quick for you because the coolest part about this is Mike and I have known each other since we were kids. Y'all probably didn't know that.
What? I didn't know that.
I've
Mike
heard
and
some
I-
stories.
Yeah. Mike and I went to church together as kids.
good.
And so we knew each other then. And then Micah went on to Anderson University. Is that right?
It is.
Micah was a basketball player in college, you all.
Oh.
Yes.
I believe it.
By player, I mean sitting on the bench most of the time.
It's important too.
That's right.
Everyone has a purpose, Micah.
That's right. So that's the background. I just wanted to share that a little bit because it's interesting and fun. We've known each other for a long time. So that's pretty cool. Micah goes on to be Navy F-18 dude and get into Top Gun school, which is pretty elite. I will tell you, the closest I ever got to Top Gun anything was we were doing I'm an upstager, Micah. I got to tell a story to try to one up someone, but you're going to laugh here because
Typical Viper pilot, right?
enough about flying. Let's talk about me. But anyway, so I did a high altitude dive bombing one time, and I was the only one that turned in my score sheet. So I was that quarter's high altitude dive bombing Top Gun. That was it.
That's fantastic.
Nobody else turned in a score sheet. I got the award. Just saying. For the
That's
quarter.
awesome.
You're not trying. So
But I was nowhere near. And the Air Force's, I guess, equivalent, Micah, is fighter weapons school.
it is.
Similar. So I can just tell you all this, and everybody that's listening, that fighter weapons school, Top Gun school is, and this is one of the true parts of the movie. I mean, it is the best of the best. Maybe that sounds cheesy right now, but it is. And there's like one in each squadron, and it's like the instructor's instructor. So just pretty amazing how much higher level a weapons school guy or gal is than the rest of the squadron, in my opinion. Or maybe that was just me. But anyway,
That's awesome.
it's significant because those schools are intense. And so it's impressive when somebody comes back from those schools, they are just head and shoulders above the rest of the squadron. How about it?
Kudos. Well, we're telling flying stories. I'm a tanker guy, so a KC-10 guy. So there was one time I was in Hawaii, and they gave the aircraft commander, who's dragging all these F-16s, the highest suite at the hotel. And it was almost like into Peach's story where he almost got killed. Very similar. And our KC-10 is so elite, we don't even have a fighter weapons school.
Man.
No fighter weapons school
awesome.
needed. But
Not yet,
no,
Rob, not
that's
yet.
incredible that you guys do that stuff out
Yeah.
there. I was actually fortunate enough to be stationed at Northcom with the Top Gun guy, and I was there when the trailer came out. Went way back in whatever that was, 2020, and we went over and he watched it about 20 times, the trailer, because he knew the guy that was going low level across the desert, I guess. But Micah, what airplanes did you fly as an instructor? Did you just fly the F-18 or?
So yeah, as a weapons school instructor, I flew all variants of the F-18. we had the Legacy Hornets, which is typically designated A through C or Alpha through Charlie. And then the Super Hornet was the Echo and the Foxtrot. The Echo was the single seat version, and the Foxtrot was the 2-seat version. So I flew all variants of the Hornet. I was qualified in the T-34 Mentor, which is kind of like a range safety airplane. And then once I transitioned over to the Air Force, I was qualified in the F-16. So.
All right,
Oh, that's cool.
so I got to know, Micah. So talk about the differences in the F-16, in the F-18, and I know the F-18 has so many different variants. Like the Super Hornet is, way ahead of like the D model, right? Something like that. So what about those models versus the F-16? And I know, to me, like the F-18, it always had that high angle of attack, which was a scary thing to see from the seat of F-16. But otherwise, and that stuff's not super important in the real world. I mean, it's all about the avionics and the weapons. But what's your thoughts on the comparisons? That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, the comparisons are what I alluded to before. The F-16, all of its strengths are the F-18's weaknesses, and for the F-18, all of the F-18's strengths are the F-16's weaknesses. So when I kind of compare the two, when you're talking about the Legacy Hornet, they're very similar capability-wise, but the F-16 has a lot more power and it's a lot lighter. And so with how much thrust it has, it allows it to go much faster, and it's built for a high-speed fight. Whereas the F-18 overall is built with much heavier landing gear, much heavier equipment because it has to land on the aircraft carrier. In doing so, it's designed to fly at really low speeds very well. So I can maneuver, an F-18 at 110 knots very, very well, whereas the F-16 is typically around 150, 160, and starts falling off. So that's the big deal, is the F-16 has more power and is better in a faster fight. But the F-18 is much better at a slower fight. So when you're balancing that fight, it's really, how can I get the F-16 slow? And the F-16 is always asking the questions, how can I keep this, a high speed fight? And if you're in a high speed fight against an F-16 and you're flying an F-18, you're going to lose. And if you get the F-16 into a slow speed fight, you're going to win. When we take a look at the overall avionics advantage, there's not a whole lot between the Legacy Hornet and the F-16s. Are very similar in capabilities, but when you take a look at the Super Hornet, it's a generation past both the F-16 and the Legacy F-18 Hornet. And so now it would basically be the difference in running a Commodore 64 in the airplane by maybe running an Apple iPhone in the airplane.
Wow, that's incredible.
The radars are much better. The systems are much better. They're much better integration between the weapon suites. And so when you balance, lethality and survivability, the F-18 Super Hornet is both more lethal and more survivable than both the Legacy F-18 and the F-16.
You were up at Fallon. Is that where the Top Gun is now for the Navy in 2011?
Absolutely. So Top Gun was stood up, I believe. No, I don't believe it was stood up in Miramar, California. And the way I remember it is I was actually, Top Gun's birthday is my wife and I's anniversary. So March 3rd, 1969 is when Top Gun School was started in Miramar, California. In 1996 is when it transitioned over to Fallon, Nevada, and it combined with the Naval Strike and Air Warfare Center. And that's where I went through. I went through Fallon, Nevada between January of 2011 and the beginning of April 2011. And then my instructor tour took me back to Lemoore, California.
How did that process happen?
So that process actually happens before you even go to Top Gun. So
wow. So you're picked to become an instructor even before you go.
It is. So it's a little bit different. It's not like a competition as you go through. So really how it works out is the only two places in the Navy that I'm aware of that allows peers to pick peers is Top Gun and SEAL Team 6. Those are the only two places that when you go through, whether it's Green Team at SEAL Team 6 or whether it's Top Gun, you go through a ranking board. You typically will do a rush ride or an interview with Top Gun, a Top Gun instructor or a weapons school instructor. You'll gather letters of recommendation. They will also reach out to a lot of people to see what your reputation is. And then they rack and stack you and they vote. And it has to be a unanimous vote for you to be selected to go to the Top Gun school or the Navy Fighter Weapons School.
Is Micah? One of the guys that was with us as we were watching that trailer at Northcom was a Blue Angel, and it sounds similar to his process a little bit.
It is. It's very similar to the Blue Angels process. I'm not really sure how they handle it. They may be able to hand select their guys too, but it's the Top Gun selection process and the Blue Angel selection process is a little bit secretive. But the generality is we get to select our own people to come who we want, basically. So from there, you're racked and stacked, and you put a preference sheet in for what you would like to do. So if you would like to stay on Top Gun actual or Top Gun staff, then you would put that number 1. If you would like to go to the weapons schools, the East Coast of weapons schools, you would put that number 1. Or if you wanted to go into test land, like VX9, you would put that down as a choice. And then once we take a look at all the positions that are available, we will try to place those individuals at the best spots that they can to be most useful. So that's kind of how it works.
I'm curious, how long were you flying before you got selected for Top Gun? Were you pre-military also experienced flying, or how did that whole process work?
So I had been a civilian pilot for 3 or 4 years before I went to the Navy. Through the Navy, you'll go through flight school. A naval flight school and the fighter track is about 2.5 years long. And then you go to the F-18 training. We call it the RAG, Readiness Air Group. And you'll train initially in the F-18, and then you'll go to your initial tour. So they call it a JO tour or junior officer tour. And that's typically around 3 years. So the first chance you have to be selected to go into Top Gun is at about year 6 or 7 in the Navy.
Was that just the most nerve-wracking time of your career, just at that time where you were thinking you might get selected, but going through the whole process? Or what would you say is like kind of the toughest part of your naval career?
Oh, wow. I think everything's tough, but everything's wonderful as well. Definitely going through the Top Gun selection portion of it, you really want it bad. And there's so many qualified applicants. And believe it or not, it's probably less than 1% of pilots. They say the best of 1%, but there's less than 1% of pilots that get selected to go through the course. And then there's even less that graduate. So typically, there's about 9 pilots that are selected, at least when I went through, 4 times a year. And you usually, on average, have 1 or 2 that wash out of the program that don't make it through. So you look at everything, you're probably looking at about 27 Navy graduates to graduate from Top Gun a year out of the 1,000 that we have. And then you have a few more Marine Corps instructors that go through as well and pass the course. But it's pretty selective. So going through the course is probably the most challenging thing other than combat that I've ever done in my life. So it's very, very challenging.
I can't believe they let Marines in there. That's from Mark. We got a Marine on staff.
We got our Mark, our F-18 guy.
One of the best pilots ever with we're Marines, but we like giving them a ton of credit.
So, Peaches, you talked about combat. Can you tell us any combat stories?
Oh man, you put me on the spot now. Let's see.
Do you have to kill me if you do?
In 2013, I wound up reporting to VFA 103, which is the Jolly Rogers. It's on the East Coast squadron. It's the F-18F, so a 2-seat squadron. I'd been a single-seat pilot for about 10 years, and then I went over to the East Coast and wound up being a 2-seat F-18F pilot. And during that time, I was the training officer, or in Air Force speak, the weapons officer of that squadron for about 2.5 years. And during that time frame was when ISIS had really taken over like a lot of Iraq and Syria. And so our squadron actually wound up getting deployed right after the Paris, France attacks in 2015. So we showed up on station over in Fifth Fleet or over in Iraq and Syria right around, I guess it would be November timeframe of 2015, and then we stayed for almost 8 months over there until July of 2016. And so, you can always remember your first. I'd done multiple deployments before, but that was my first real, I would say, combat deployment. And I can remember the day, December 28th on 2015. We went into Iraq, and during that time frame, we were tasked with taking care of the city of Ramadi, which is in central Iraq. And it was kind of a hot zone for ISIS, along with Fallujah, and then all the way up north toward Mosul. And so we were tasked with supporting what's called armed overwatch, and then close air support, or CAS, with the counterterrorism service, which is the Iraqi. If you think about special operations in America, think about CTS, or the Combat Terrorism Service. I'm sorry, Counterterrorism Service in Iraq, as their premier fighting group. And then they had some military advisors in as well. And I'll never forget, it was my second flight in country. The first one was busy, but this one was really busy because there was a massive fight going on in the middle of Ramadi. And I'd been through Top Gun. I'd been a weapon school instructor for 3 years. I mean, I lived it and I breathed it for so long. But even that first time, when you get the call over the radios, hey, we need air support, we need it right now. Man, the hair on the back of your head stands up. Not that I have much anymore. It does. So my wingman and I got called to engage some ISIS fighters that had basically been pinned down in a 5-story building, and we pushed out kind of to the west. I mean, you can, on the radios, it's really intense. I mean, you can hear gunfire, you can hear the JTACs, giving you coordinates. They give what's called a 9-line. There's 9 pieces of information that they're going to give you, including target elevation and target coordinates and so on and so forth. But we pushed out. We were up about 15,000 feet, and we got the call of the radios. We want 5 joint direct attack munitions on this building, and we were like, 5. So we put our sensors on the building, and it looked like Ramadi looked like downtown Louisville or downtown Knoxville. I mean, it's a huge city, and I'll never forget looking down there and thinking to myself, it was so destroyed. It looked like God had put his boots on and just walked through Ramadi.
Wow.
And anyways, we could see some of the ISIS fighters shooting out of windows of this 5-story building. And so we got our coordinates, and we got up to about 15 or 16,000 feet. We're going about 500 knots, and we got the clearance authority to drop. So it's called cleared hot. They say it typically 3 times over the radio. And we dropped 5 JDAMs on them, and there wasn't any more fire coming from that building.
Yeah.
It was amazing. It took the entire, it didn't take the entire building down. It took a lot of the building down. And it was, that was the first time I'd ever dropped in combat. And you never, kind of remember that. And then there was 8 months more of that, but that was pretty intense.
Wow. Have you deployed as an Air Force guy as well?
Believe it or not, I was set to deploy in 2018, and I wound up, Charlie will laugh at me for this, but I wound up having major back issues and having 2 back surgeries. So the Viper broke.
Ouch. Yeah.
So no, I have not deployed in the F-16. All my deployments were in the F-18, but I flew the F-16 for several years. So
if you had to pick, if you could strap on one, of course you can go strap on the F-16, I guess, but if you could go strap on either of those jets, which one would you go fly?
First love, the F-18.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Love it.
What about the movie? What's the most accurate and most inaccurate parts of the of Top Gun?
Oh, I love the movie. Believe it or not, on Top Gun staff, when you're going through, if you make a Top Gun quote, you get fined. So you have to
Worth it, totally.
I'm the type of person that was so inspired that from Top Gun in 1986 that I didn't care. I'd get fined every day. I'd say, the need for speed. They would just look at me and shake their heads. I would say, believe it or not, there are some inaccuracies with the flying, but I would say overall the flying is more accurate than you would think. even in the new film. I have a couple buddies that did a lot of the flying for the new film that's coming out. That's neat to see them. But the flying is actually very, very accurate. I would say the most inaccurate portion of it is the culture. The culture is ultra professional. There is some ego there, but even guys that have ego, they are taught to use it constructively. And if they don't use it constructively, they don't stay in the community for very long. So I would say that there's not a whole lot of I'm the best out there. Everyone knows, everyone knows who's good and who's average and who's not. It's a very tight knit community, and so it's small enough that you can't create your own narrative of being good or not. It's Top Gun is the most professional place I've ever been, and the standard is the highest I've ever been. So that's what I would say is. The most inaccurate portion is the culture. The most accurate portion, although with some inaccuracies, is the flying.
Yeah. No, I take it probably no buzzing the tower.
Well,
yes.
not the actual tower, but there's a large bombing complex called Bravo 17. It's out of Fallon, Nevada, and they have a huge target set that's out there that we practice over and over. It looks like a village from the air, and they have a tower down there. And man, I've seen some incredible flybys by that tower.
Oh, that's cool. If we have any on video, we'll put that in the show notes, right, Cowbell?
Yeah. Oh yeah, we can find some. If it's on YouTube, I'll find it. Yep.
Okay. Serious question. Rob asked about the best airplanes. I'm going to ask you best movie. Top Gun versus Iron Eagle.
Well,
at least throw Transformers in there.
Yeah, Top Gun by far. Yes.
Okay, all right.
That's not even a contest.
I want to clear the air.
That's embarrassing, Charlie. You two really are cowboys. I know the boat is a big differentiator between the Air Force and the Navy, but I always hear cool things going on the boat.
Yeah, the boat it's an amazing piece of equipment. I say this, if you ever get a chance to go out and look at one, if you see it in operation, it's the greatest team that I've ever seen in my life. There's 5,000 people that are moving at different speeds, managing different things in order to launch aircraft off the pointy end and go do combat operations. So it's amazing. It really comes to light when the weather is really, really bad. I can remember one time on my first deployment, we were out doing what's called a workup cycle before we went out on deployment, and we were off the coast of San Diego, and the waves were huge. And I was a junior officer. I didn't have a ton of experience, and the waves were 30 feet. So when you think about that, as your hand goes, if the wave is 30 feet, you're going to have 30-foot swings here where the boat comes up, and then it's going to now dip 30 feet for a total of 60 feet of movement, which is incredible. And so I'll never forget this. It's more of a funny story, but I was flying with my senior landing signals officer. I'll just use his call sign as Cherry. I haven't got permission to use it. But he was flying. He was the head landing signals officer, is the safety officer on the deck that helps airplanes land on the aircraft carrier. And so he knew the waves are big. He knew I was new. And he said, "Hey, Peaches, I'm going to be off the radio for one second." So I knew what he was doing. He was switching up the LSO frequency. He was going to ask them what was really going on down there. So, I snuck over to the frequency and I listened in, and Cherry contacted the other LSOs that were on the ship. And he said, "How bad is it down there?" And he was like, "This is the worst I've ever seen it. I've never seen waves like this." He was like, "Wow." He was like, "Okay, well, let's move to a system called Mobilis." And I won't get into the details of that, but it's basically a manual landing system, an automatic landing system, because the waves, were so large. And he switched back to our frequency and said, "Hey, Peaches, are you up?" And I'd switched back and I said, "Hey, what'd they say? How was he?" He was like, "Oh, it's not a big deal, man. Waves aren't that big." I just remember listening. I was like, "You liar." But, there is times at the boat, nighttime, bad weather, One time I was a single engine, you land, and it's amazing what the body and the mind and how they disconnect, because I can remember many times where my mind was not scared at all. I was concentrating so hard on what I was doing. But when I landed, my knees were hitting or knocking so hard I couldn't taxi. So I would just say, "Hey, give me a second." I would calm my legs down, then I would taxi. But it was like a disconnect between the mind and the nerves, which was really crazy. But I could tell stories about night landings for days, but it's as intense as you would think it would be.
Probably no stories like that at UPS, I imagine.
That's all they do is night landings.
That's true.
UPS is typically, the intensity is like, man, you got too much cream in my coffee.
That's right.
I asked for my steak medium.
Yeah.
Now you're talking my style.
That's right. Oh man, Micah, we appreciate you coming on with us, man. And I tell you what, Mike is a real deal, y'all. I've known him for a long time, and it's cool to know. And this is what I miss about our military service the most is just the people, quality of people like Mike is talking about. And just getting to know Micah and hear him talk today. Our audience, and we know, and Rob, you and I have served, and Ben, you know too, that our country's in good hands, man. We got some super talented, high integrity, excellent people that are out there serving our country, and it's just incredible. Really, really impressive.
Yeah, thank you for your service, Mike. We really appreciate it, and thanks for coming on.
Yeah, seriously, thank you, Micah.
Awesome, very cool.
Love it. All right,
Awesome.
we're at the end of Flight 35. I think it might be our best one yet. Thanks for joining us again, Peaches. We appreciate it. Micah Porter, UPS, Top Gun, Navy, Air Force. He's got it all. We're going to have you as a return. We got to have you return. After you watch the movie, maybe we can have you back and get some, we'll be Siskel and Ebert if anyone remembers those guys. You don't know who those are. But Rotten Tomatoes, yeah. Okay, couple of quotes from, value investor himself, Benjamin Graham. The intelligent investor is a realist who sells to optimists and buys from pessimists. Huh? Nice. And the second, but investing isn't about beating others at their game. It's about controlling yourself at your own game. I know I've said that one before, but I love it so much I put it back on. That's it. We've reached the end. Let us be the first to welcome you to the end of Flight 35. If you enjoyed the podcast, click that subscribe button so we can reach more people. And as Emerson said, what do you got, Charlie? You're going to say something.
The world makes way for those who plan.
Who know where they're going. From all of us at Leading Edge, we wish you smooth landings and soft rides, or vice versa. Either one. We're out. Wait. Michael, what do we say when knock it off, right? Knock it off.
Knock it off. Knock it off.
Knock it off.